Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're stepping into something really profound. We're heading to the dry zones of Sri Lanka, to a place where the Earth itself is basically this massive, silent archive of human history. We're diving into the ancient mysteries of the Diwul Wewa site. As you'll see through the cinematic recreations and 3D architectural renders we'll be exploring, we're going to uncover a haunting narrative hidden right there in the soil. It's a story of two vastly different civilizations, leaving their mark on the exact same piece of ground, but separated by centuries. So, right at the heart of this excavation is a major chronological tension. Think about it. How did two completely distinct eras of faith and burial come to share the exact same soil? At Diwul Wewa, archaeologists uncovered this highly complex megalithic burial ground. But then, resting right alongside and even above it, there's a much later Buddhist monastic complex. To really grasp how these two worlds literally collided without actually touching, we need to carefully unearth the layers of time here. Act 1. The landscape of antiquity. Now, before we even look at the graves themselves, we really have to look at the land. The name Diwul Wewa actually translates to wood apple tank, and that's our geographic anchor right here in the Anuradhapura district. Picture these sweeping aerials of the Sri Lankan dry zone. It's an isolated, a highly demanding climate. And then visualize the wood apple tank itself. This brings us to a concept that's absolutely crucial, the hydraulic burial connection. You see, the cemetery is situated directly adjoining the tank, because for these ancient people, water was everything. It meant life, agriculture, survival. So it's definitely no coincidence that their village irrigation systems were placed in this essential symbiosis with the ritual placement of their dead. And finally, imagine the dense jungle giving way to these dramatic rocky outcrops, which acted as both a natural boundary and, as we're going to see, an ancient quarry. This connection to the water is so vital that the source text explicitly points it out, noting the occurrence of burials adjoining the tank rejoins one of a similar situation of the megalithic burials of South India. This deep hydraulic burial connection instantly links this seemingly isolated site to these vast ancient ancestral networks stretching all across the subcontinent. It's like water and memory are bound together right there in the earth, reminding us that even the most isolated ancient communities were actually part of a massive interconnected human story. Act 2. The ritual landscape. Okay, moving into the solemn architecture of the cemetery itself, we encounter what's known as a cist. Basically, a cist is a prehistoric, small stone-built coffin-like box, or an ossuary. Picture these incredibly heavy stone slabs. You've got a western slab and eastern slab, all bounded by capstones. These subterranean tombs are exactly what the archaeologists meticulously uncovered beneath all those layers of humus and loose, moisture-filled earth. This wasn't just, a place to dump the dead. It was a highly structured ritual space, carefully carved right out of the jungle. And the sheer scale of this operation is what's really wild. 131. That is the number of stone cist burials plotted out over this highly structured 2-acre ritual space. This was absolutely not a haphazard graveyard. It was a massive, monumental undertaking for the community that built it. Plus, they were incredibly exacting in their methods. The megaliths were symbolically oriented north-south or east-west. Archaeologists found these massive capstones, some weighing super heavily over the cists, held in place by carefully planted support stones. And some cists even had smaller stones acting as makeshift capstones, securely sealing the tombs beneath the surface. It just shows this profound dedication to ritual geometry. Act 3. Material culture unearthed. So what did these ancient builders actually leave behind? Looking at the artifacts, we really have to treat them with a scholarly reverence. Inside the cists, investigators found what we can call the ritual of the vessel. The graves were actually largely devoid of full skeletons. Instead, they practiced cremation elsewhere, and then carefully gathered the calcined, post-cremated bone remnants. They took these fragments and placed them deep inside beautifully crafted black and red ware pottery, right alongside this mysterious ashy substance stuck to the interior, which were very likely food offerings. These modest vessels had a really profound purpose, safeguarding the ancestral spirit deep within the cist structure. And right here is where we discover a fascinating, almost jarring technological paradox. Out on the rocky outcrop, we see the wedge hole technique, which is a primitive, highly physical method of extracting large stone slabs. Yet inside the burials, researchers found iron nails, an iron blade, iron bangle pieces, and importantly, iron slag. This stark comparison is a real game changer, showing us a society in the midst of a massive technological transition. Which brings us to the actual term, megalithic. It refers to prehistoric, technologically proficient cultures that utilized large stones for monuments. But the presence of iron, alongside discoveries like rock crystal beads and carnelian beads, some even still featuring fiber threads, paints a picture of a society that was absolutely not merely surviving on the margins. They were actively engaging in distant trade, really sophisticated beadwork, and active metallurgy. And their sophistication extended right into their ceramics. Archaeologists cataloged a staggering 17 distinct types of pottery, labeled types A through Q. This collection was heavily dominated by precisely fired black and red ware dishes, but it also included convex flaring bowls, tulip-shaped bowls, and coarse gray ware. This meticulous technical analysis proves they had an advanced mastery of firing techniques and a highly specialized material culture. As the archaeological report states pretty bluntly, the presence of iron tools and an iron slag clearly shows that the people knew the technology of iron. They weren't just trading for iron from somewhere else. The slag proves they were actually smelting and innovating right there near the wood apple tank. Act 4. The synthesis of two eras. This brings the site's two incredibly distinct timelines face to face, creating that profound chronological tension we talked about earlier. First, you have the megalithic burials established in the pre-Christian era. We even see hints of the 3rd century BC with specific graffiti marks. But then, boom, there is a massive leap forward in time. Right over this exact same site, in the 4th to 5th century AD, a Buddhist monastic complex is built. Now, you might be wondering, how do we know the burials are so much older? Well, it all comes down to the micro details. Archaeologists found etched carnelian beads, which are widespread, well-known indicators of the pre-Christian era. But even more compelling, they found graffiti marks on the pottery, specifically a symbol similar to the Ashokan Bwami letter Ma. These markers provide bulletproof evidence of an ancient pre-Buddhist timeline for the people buried in these cists. But during the initial jungle clearance of this site, investigators uncovered something entirely different: a partly sunken limestone-seated Buddha about a meter high. And further digging revealed a shrine built of burnt bricks, yielding tiles and completely different architectural materials. This Buddhist complex securely dates to a much later occupation in the 4th and 5th centuries AD. So the big question, did the Buddhist monks bury their dead in these megalithic stone cists? Well, the archaeological synthesis is crystal clear here, delivering this with the scholarly gravitas it deserves. The text concludes, Buddhism had nothing to do with the custom of death ceremonies, at least at this site. The two eras coexisted on the exact same coordinate of longitude and latitude, but purely as separate cultural expressions, separated by hundreds of years. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. When those early Buddhist monks arrived to build their brick shrine, to carve their limestone Buddha in the 4th century, did they have any idea what lay beneath their feet? What echoes of the ancient megalith builders, of their iron tools and ashy vessels, still remained in the soil of the Sri Lankan dry zone? It's a pretty powerful reminder that history is built in layers, and sometimes the most profound stories are the silent, shared histories buried right beneath us. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep exploring the layers of the past.